Righty. Awesome. Well, Sharon, thanks for joining, man. Always appreciate you. Also, super sweet jacket you're wearing, I see.
Thank you
You
for
know,
the
I
thank you for the
no,
duds.
of course, if anybody wants swag, they just got to let me know. I love sending assistantly swag, especially when it's cold out. It's nice and cozy. But just want to thank you for joining. Obviously, I think everybody knows Sharon here, president of Real. Built, exit, sold, many different types of companies. One of the biggest players in the real estate space. Um, but just really big, awesome, influential guy into the business space in general. And I've known Sharon for many years. He's a good buddy, good friend of mine. He's also hired from us a ton of VAs, and he has a really great, robust team. It's why his brand is so big. He's got a team behind it. Obviously, he's the face, and he creates such great content. But obviously, he has a team in the background doing what's needed to make sure that it's the biggest brand out there. But as we head into the new year, I always think it's like really important for people to really start, just kind of start the thinking, the mentality of how to grow, scale their teams going into Q1 of 2025. But I know like you've been hiring for such a long time, and you have secrets, hacks on all this. So I wanted to invite you on here to just share what you've learned. I know obviously you probably have 20, 30 plus years of hiring under your belt, onshore, offshore. And it'd be really great to hear from you, just some of the secrets that you have, some of the hacks that you may have, and then some different points that you and I can talk over from what I've seen, and what clients come to me with, and what we've successfully done for a lot of clients, and what you've done for yourself, and what you've helped other businesses and entrepreneurs, agents, brokers, etc. do as well. So thanks for joining. And I will leave the spotlight to you, and then just excited to have a conversation and just a jam session with you today.
Oh man, super. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. You said something very interesting. We should start there. I think it'll be helpful to everybody, which is you said, "Hey, there's a team that runs the brand right now," and you're right. I will tell you that I don't do anything anymore. Like when I say I don't do anything anymore, I don't do almost anything anymore. The only thing that I do related to my brand right now is I write emails because I stay close to every single email that I write, and but almost everything else, call it 95% of those things, are handled by the team. And to the point where a lot of folks would be like, "Oh, I got to create a content day where I have to sit down and shoot content." Well, I don't even do that anymore because the team follows, around to events and they take the full footage and then they cut it up and they do blogs with it, etc. But that goes to a very important point, which is the only reason that other people won't do it is because it's actually not a money thing. It's actually
Mhm.
because they believe that people they can't find other people as smart and capable as them. And that's a really big issue that I think if we solved anything else, and if you actually got this, you can actually just leave the call. The most important thing is believing that smart and capable people exist, and it's a belief system. Just knowing that smart and capable people exist, and that you can find them is a whole unlocking mechanism in and of its own. And when I say that smart and capable people exist and you can find them, then it should be okay. Like I'll give you an example. My Lath knows my business coach. My business coach lives in Australia. Well, that's like, are they smart and capable and are they accessible? Yeah, I got them. Can I get a hold of them? Yes, that's good. Well, should I then say, well, should I get, why should I think about getting a onshore coach versus an offshore coach? So like now would Michael be an offshore coach? Therefore, because he lives in Australia or he lives in the Philippines or he lives somewhere else, is he not as qualified, as smart, as capable? So if we can just realize that we're looking for smart and capable people, and it doesn't matter where in the world they are, and we're on a mad dash to finding them as soon as possible, because if you don't find them, I'm going to find them and I'm going to hire them, and you're not going to have any good people. There's enough people, by the way. But
Yeah.
if we can just, the number one lesson I would give us is if we can just assume that they're smart and capable people that are out there, and we can hire them as long as they're anywhere in the world, we'd be amazed at how easy this becomes.
No, and I agree. And like you said, even on your coach, it's not just Philippines, Latin America, United States. It's like, if you're willing and open to expand your talent pool across the globe, I mean, there's good talent everywhere, and it gives you more of a variety, it gives you more of an option to choose from, not just on skill and experience, but also like the personality and culture fit. Like, how cool is it for you that you have an Australian coach? Your marketing person is located in Canada. You have a Filipino-based team, and then obviously you have a, your background as well. You didn't, grow up here in the United States, and it's like you guys get to combine as one. Everybody has different opinions, different perspectives, and I think that's what makes it really, really exciting. And I think that one of the biggest stigmas is if they're not local, they're not smart. And there's highly educated people. I mean, a lot of team members in the
Dude,
Philippines, Latin America,
I'll
they got
actually, yeah.
bachelors and masters.
Well, I'll actually give you this funny thing, and then maybe I'll talk about I'll talk about a few ideas that I have that can be
Yeah,
helpful to
yeah.
everybody. Right now, we have a Filipino operations manager on our team. She's been with us maybe 3 to 4 years, maybe more. Um, I don't believe I have been able to. I've tried to hire. I've yet to be able to hire a domestic, like an onshore person that is even half her capability for unlimited budget. I'm willing to pay whatever, but I've yet to find somebody onshore that can do half as good as what she does on her day-to-day basis, which is mind-blowing if you think about it, because that's when you start to believe that smart and capable people, and like you said, the expanding of talent pool, like they're great people everywhere, right? Which is awesome. But I'll tell you, like most business owners, when they bring on virtual team members to their business, you have an insane advantage. And the insane advantage is this. And the advantage is you have a set of fresh eyes. And I don't believe that we give people a chance to really utilize their fresh eyes. So if we were bringing Maddie on board, my question would be, hey, within the first 2 weeks, she will lose her fresh eyes, right?
Hmm.
Joyce will lose her fresh eyes. Late will lose his fresh eyes. Like you just lose your fresh eyes. And so I always tell our team members, hey, you're going to lose your fresh eyes. So the first thing when you come on board is we're going to do a 1 week, end of 1 week and end of 2 week meeting. I call it the fresh eyes meeting. And I just want you to tell me everything that you saw that you thought was either great, top 5%, or weird, bottom 5%. Hey, I was walking in and I saw that these 3 lights were out in the thing. Or I realized that all our old files are not categorized. Or I realized that we still have like 300 old blog posts on our sites that's reducing our SEO. I realized that, we're featuring this person on these random website pictures and none of them work here anymore. Like, can you imagine, like we had a virtual assistant come onto Reel and they said, hey, Sharon, I have a question. Can you tell me who were in this picture? And I said, what picture? The picture that's on our main website. And I said, oh yeah. And I started counting, like only 3 of us are still at the company. She's like, so you have
Yeah.
80 people on this picture, of whom like most of them are not even associated with Reel anymore. So you have these fresh eyes that are really powerful. Maybe a good process, a good system. Maybe we're hacking something. And when someone else gets to see it after 14 days, they're kind of wound into the process. They see the same rose-colored glasses as you do, and they can't really tell any different. So 2 powerful things happen. Number 1, you get a free consultant to look at your business with someone that cares, which is really powerful. And the person that actually brings up a suggestion automatically takes responsibility to doing something about it. So which is really
Yeah.
powerful that you give them that. Like that's number 1. The second is these first 2 weeks don't become hey, I'm going to see if Jimmy, my new virtual team member, is any good. I also give that person a little grace. They feel valued where they're like, wait a minute, in these first 2 weeks, my new employer wants my feedback, is not just evaluating me every single day. Because all of them just feel like they're constantly under the evaluation kind of, microscope. But in this case, you flip the relationship dynamic where they give us advice, which completely changes how much they're integrated in the company. So like if you can just do a fresh eyes meeting, tell me the top 5% and the bottom 5%, the feedback that you get and the relationship that you would build with your virtual team member is amazing.
Yeah, because I think there's 2 things. It's they feel value, right? Like that you actually value their opinion, their suggestions, their idea, and it automatically starts the relationship where this person could probably be autonomous in the future, right? They're giving me autonomy now in the first 2 weeks to just throw whatever I want out there, and they're going to trust me. Where now after the 2 weeks, if anything comes up, if I have any more ideas or suggestions, that Sharon is going to be receptive to it instead of just closing it off, saying, "Hey, I need you to do these things. I need you to do it my way, and this is the only way of doing it." And it's really interesting because when you do hire people, typically when they bring ideas and suggestions, it's typically because the idea or the process that they want to bring in is better than the way you're doing it.
Of course, of course. If not, they would not recommend it at all, right? Which is good.
Exactly.
You brought up something interesting. So here's the second thing that I believe that needs to be established on day one is what makes somebody stressed. And that is that they don't have a way to resolve an issue or get a question answered or get unstuck in some way. So creating a Q&A mechanism is super important. And the reason is that um, we think that, hey, we're hiring Jimmy to come on and help us. And we just assume that Jimmy should be able to read our mind. We just assume that Jimmy should be good at their job. But people have questions. And what you want is a clean way of them working and answering questions. Here's the thing that I've seen late in a lot of folks that hire virtual team members, why the virtual thing does not work for them, is that they get irritated when the questions get asked.
Hmm.
Right? And so you're like, oh my gosh, like another email from Jimmy, another email from Jimmy, another. Well, if the problem is in email, you getting 4 emails is irritating to you, then just tell them that please don't email me questions because email stresses me out. And then they say, well, can we WhatsApp you questions? Like, please don't WhatsApp me questions because it's another app. Let's just create a question answer channel on Slack. And anytime you have a question, you're welcome to put it in there. I generally check my Slack 3 times a day. So now they know when you may be able to get back to them. You know that outside of that channel, you're not going to get any irritating questions. So now you've established some like a medium for the Q&A session. The number one thing that irritates most people is, they didn't call me or they didn't text me and they sent me this email. So I got frustrated. So just fixing and having a Q&A mechanism up front does 2 things. It allows questions to come to you in a medium that you like, and it allows them to know the rules of engagement around this so that they don't start doing something that you don't like. And then it's weird for you to tell them later, stop emailing me questions, because you can tell them that up front. It seems really small, but if you just get that done, you'd be amazed at how smooth that relationship goes.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I always say team members are not mind readers, right? They're not gonna know everything about your business going into it. They're gonna have questions for you. But even from the get-go, if you can just outline, hey, I need you to, ask me questions via Slack, and I'll get back to you at the end of the day, or I'll get back to you ASAP. Questions also means like they just want to understand your preference, right? They want to understand your preference of doing things. They want to make sure that they exceed your expectations also of doing things. So like questions are not always a bad things. Questions mean they want your preference and they're curious and they want to do a great job. It's not that they're not paying attention. It's just they want to make sure things are getting done right and on time.
Yeah, totally. Well, that also, gives me a chance to do number 3, which I like to do early on in the relationship, which is I call this the rinse and repeat.
Mhm.
And what I mean by the rinse and repeat is there is something that this person has done in the past. So I want them to take a past system that they did, that they are good at, and install it for us. So I end up asking them, hey, I say, hey, so what is one system that you've built in a past company that we should build something similar? So they are like, wait a minute, I built this email marketing system, or I built this file management system, or I built this whatever, and we don't have that. They're like, hey, I built this. We went through the process. I built it for 9 months. I know it inside out. I can rebuild this for us. Now they feel a sense of deep contribution because 1, they're doing something they're really good at. 2, we get something that we never had. 3, we get something proven that they already built somewhere else. 4, like that asset, if you had to like hire a consultant, would cost tens and twenties and hundreds
Mhm.
of thousands of dollars. So we assume that they come to us with some skills and they're here to work for us. We don't actually give them the benefit of the doubt that they've been in systems-based roles and they've seen all the companies work, and they can give us some insight that we've never seen before.
I mean, and that could go with any position, right? You hire an EA, right? Maybe somebody used Superhuman for their email management, right? Hey, we use Superhuman for email management to get your inbox to zero. Let me implement it for you. It's going to make things a lot smoother. For marketing, right? Hey, we use Canva and actually built a template library. So when listings pop up, I go to my template library, I make it on brand, I do it according to listing, and then we're all good to go. It's really like I think one of the most important things is because they bring so much value from previous clients or previous companies, and they've seen so much. It's like what I call a quick win, right? It's like the quickest win. Bring something that you did previously. We can easily implement it here, in whatever position that they're hiring for. And again, it's just rinse and repeat, right? And they bring in one system, they probably have a second, they probably have a third, and it's just how you could streamline your operations of doing things in your business.
Yeah, so good. Here's my 4th favorite one, and I hope more people take advantage of this. A lot of times, late, I know you've seen this too, is sometimes you need a specialist. So let's say you are getting you want your team member, virtual team member to do stuff in QuickBooks. I'm just making up an example. Well, not everybody's an expert in QuickBooks, but there are QuickBooks experts out there. So you can say, hey, you know what? I found this QuickBooks expert. They charge $100 an hour. I'm going to get my assistant Jimmy a 1 hour consulting call with this person. And then I'm going to tell Jimmy, hey, write down all your questions before the call and then record this call and I will pay this person. Now, Jimmy is like, wait a minute, Lath is willing to invest in me, which is great. And you know that you're getting a consultant, so you're getting the best possible results. And Jimmy doesn't have to watch 200 YouTube videos to figure this out. So a lot of times what we do is we'll say, oh yeah, I know that the answer that you're looking for is in one of 400 YouTube videos. Go spend the 400 hours looking at it. Instead, I can say, hey, let's just go get the answer. What would I do? So I'm a big fan of like, you don't have to hire them a full-fledged coaching program, but like you've done this before where you're like, listen, if you want to go to get a Udemy course on how to use a certain piece of software or whatever, like I'll pay the $80 for you to go learn how to do that. So getting them a course or getting them a consulting call, I prefer a consulting call in a lot of ways because they can just go back and forth, ask the questions, record it, and then they're good. But they feel you get a better person right away. It's no different than if you had a full-time employee, you would send them to training. This time we're saying like hire one consulting call for one role that they didn't know about. Now they'll start to be like, wait a minute, I'm really good at this. So I'm a big fan of getting them kind of like very specific training.
Yeah, I mean, specific training, whether again, like you said, like a course, a consultation call, a coaching program. I mean, I think sometimes when they think of these things, they think it's like thousands of dollars. Like you put it on your little board, it could be a $50 course. It could be a $90 call, right? You could talk to a marketing guru, somebody in sales, somebody in operations, for like $120, and they'll just share all this knowledge. And it's like now you have somebody because if like they charge you to do it. 10, 15, $20,000 a month, right? But if you paid the $100, $200 on the consultation call to just give all the value that they're already going to implement to your team member that you already hired for like a fraction of the price, I mean, you want to unlock that potential and you always want to work on upskilling your team members. I mean, how many times did you do it with your operations person?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
a lot.
yeah. But here's also the crazy part where people don't really understand. My in 2020, this is December 20, in 2024, this calendar year, last 12 months, people don't realize this, but I have I have spent 0 hours on calls with my operations manager, meaning zero. I have not spent one call with her all year. That's how smooth the relationship is, and it's you can get there too, and that's super powerful. I want to talk about this, which I for very talented people, I've learned this idea work late, and I'm curious about your thinking around this. Is I've gone to a input output model. So what I say is, hey, um, every week I'm going to give you my calendar and my tasks and my I don't know my appointments. And I want you to build me. I'm going to give this to you on Friday. And I want you to, one, reconfirm all my appointments. I want you to put maps in my calendar. I want you to book my travel. And I want you to block off anything else. It's very clear input output, right? I'm going to give you X, you're going to do Y. And what I've realized is now my Jimmy, the assistant, knows exactly what needs to get done. Oftentimes what we say is, hey, every Monday, I just want you to block off my calendar. Well, okay, you didn't tell them these other three things. You didn't tell them what you were going to give them. So I'm forcefully, what I've started to do now is I'm like, hey, what's the input? What's the output? What's the input? What's the output? Because when you map the input and output, you allow them to also ask questions. You're like, hey, what about these other three things? What most people don't understand is they also talk about it in snapshots of time. Well, what if I now am been doing this with my assistant for 3 months, and what if I want to add 2 more tasks to this? I can say, hey,
Mhm.
remember I used to give you this, this, and this. Well, I'm going to add 2 more, and I need 2 more things done. Now they know exactly what to add to their workflow. Instead, we think that we have to build them an SOP for everything. You don't have to build them an SOP. And I'd love for you to maybe talk about, people say, oh, you know what? I don't have my systems. I don't have my processes. Therefore, I can't bring somebody else into the fold. How do you like respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could pull an example of when I hired my executive assistant Angie, right? Like I was so used to doing everything on my own. It's not like I had a whole document or a library of SOPs and processes ready to hand over to her, right? Like I first started her, her doing like, just email follow-ups, client communication, building portal links. And what this was like my favorite thing when you hire, whether it's EA marketing, but let's just talk about my EA, for example, is task stacking. It's so nice, man. Cause like I gave her like three things I wanted just off my plate right away. I showed her on a Zoom. She got it right away. She drafted the SOP for me. So that was actually like another thing is like, it's another hack, right? And another hack that we can insert into this is like, I had her draft the SOP and process to create the portals that I showed her how to do on Zoom in like 10 minutes. Like I didn't have a process for it or an SOP written up, but she created it. So that way, if I ever need somebody to do it in the future, we could just hand that off, which makes it really, really nice. And then she nailed down those three because like I don't like to overwhelm my team members when I bring them in with all these different tasks and role and responsibilities. So I gave her three. I'm like, okay, great. She understands these three now. Now I'm going to have her do research on my prospects when they come in. And I'm going to show her kind of what I'm looking for. Now she did it. And now she, I'm like, hey, now that you got this dialed in, can we create a resource library that is through Notion that does this? So it's like the task stacking is really nice, but it's like understanding that to not overwhelm your team member, give them three things, output three things, give them two more things, give them two more things. And by the time you know it, 3, 6, 9 months later, they're doing 15, 20 different things. And they're doing it exactly how you wanted them to do it. And there wasn't an SOP or process or essentially anything that you gave them from the forefront. I mean, dude, it could be a simple call, but I know you'll probably talk more on this on probably even easier way of just showing things or showing how you want things where you don't even have to get on a call. You don't even have to send a Slack message. There's easier ways of doing it.
Yeah, I actually, I'm so glad you brought this up. I actually have a little theory framework for this. I call this the uh, done, do it yourself, done with you, done for you framework. And how this works is do it yourself is like you've already been doing all these projects yourself. So
Correct.
now that you have a team member, you're like, man, how do I write and how do I create this transfer of this asset? Well, you don't create the transfer of this asset. You do one of two things. So if Lath is used to booking his own travel, he would just the next time he was booking his own travel, step one is do it yourself. So now he would just fire up Loom or some kind of Vimeo or whatever, and he would just record himself doing it himself the first time. Like he's like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I have to only do this one more time. So when you do it yourself, now there is this asset that can be handed off. Then he tells Jimmy, hey Jimmy, I'm going to give you this video. I want you to watch this, and then the next time I'm going to jump on Zoom with you, and I want you to share your screen, and I want you to book my travel. So that way
Mhm.
you're on the call with them, but you're not doing anything because they already know what to do. And at this point, they'll realize, hey, Late, what do you want? Do you want an aisle seat? Oh, you need a preference document for all of that stuff. So they'll figure out what they need to do. And once they have done this, then it's done for you. Then it's already handed off because they know two things now. Thing number one that they know is that they have seen this Loom asset. Thing that the two that they know is that they've actually watched it probably a couple times. And the three that they know is that you saw them do it and they shared it. So they have acknowledgement that they are doing it the way you want. And since you've handed it off, they know that how to get it done. Most of the time we're like, hey, go book me tickets. They have no idea your credit card number. They have no idea your mileage number. They have no idea your known redress number. So now you're like standing in TSA as an issue. Like you don't know those things, right? So it takes a little effort, but if you can get like a three-part format, it's super easy to hand off stuff because it lets you take responsibility for it.
Yeah, and I don't know from that if I learned to get TSA pre or to record a loom, but no, I mean I'm just joking. But I mean, like looms are super powerful things. I mean, even like you talked about, like I recorded a loom for Angie. It took me 2 minutes. Also, loom is free, which is nuts. It's just an extension. I said, "Hey Angie, this is what I want you to do." Yada yada yada. She goes, "Got it," watched it, and then she built something for me as a sample, like as a draft, so I can review it. Hey, Lathe, is this how you want it? Yes, is exactly how I want it. Or I gave her little tweaks. She does it again, perfect, and then it's like done forever. Now it's permanently off my plate. So it's cool for people to understand, like you're doing it yourself, you're doing it with them, and then they're doing it for you, and that's like one less thing for you to worry about, which makes it really nice. And that again goes back to the idea of task stacking. Get
Yeah.
as much off your plate as possible.
The I'll tell you what. the biggest lift that has been for me, and I think this is probably what you're talking about, is task stacking, is um, I'm looking for I'm looking for recurring things that I have to do because recurring things is like the biggest lift, right? Cognitive lift. I'll give you a crazy example. My son's 13 years old, you know, Neil, and we finally got him to take out all the trash on the weekends. So I never have to do it ever in like I don't have to do it for 10 more years, right? Which is absolutely amazing. So now I've completely eliminated that from my world. I don't even have to think about it anymore. So if the recurring tasks are important, you just have to let them know, hey, I think you just can't tell them to do recurring tasks. I think we teach them to have a place where they manage their recurring tasks. Because this way you can always know, hey, on a weekly basis, you have these, on a monthly basis, you have these, on a quarterly basis, you have these. They know that. So now if you add something on a weekly or a daily basis, if you add something, they know where to go and add that thing. So this also now becomes handoffable. So it's not just in their world. Or if you start to say, if that, you know, I had somebody come to me and say the other day, hey, I have too many recurring things on my plate. I'm like, show me. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're doing all the recurring tasks and you're doing your full-time job.
Mhm.
So I need to get somebody, a body here to do this because you can hand that off. So most people don't realize this, but I think the biggest leverage is getting somebody to take your recurring things away because you don't just solve the one-time 2-hour project, you solve the weekly 2-hour project.
And they're typically the most time consuming, right? Like I was doing client follow-up in Portal Links. That took me 2 to 3 hours a day. 2 to 3 hours a day times 5 days a week. That's 15, 20 hours that I was just spending doing tedious, recurring. And I can't generate it like on the ROI generating revenue opportunities here at Assistantly, which, you got to eat your own dog food, but two, it's like I'm sure even in yours, like there's probably so many, or probably previous, like so many different types of things that you were doing recurring, posting on social media, figuring out captions, writing, content that you're like, this is taking me hours every day. I can't be on calls because I have to set time aside. You're working late. You get home from the office and you're doing these recurring things all over again. So I think a lot of people need to understand that. Like, I think those recurring things are probably like the first thing that you should look to delegate.
Dude, you said something super amazing. I actually let's give if I can give you my best hack or idea, it would be this. The what a lot of people what a lot of people think is they need to um, when they're doing some work, they're like, no one else can do this,
Mhm.
right? And how you want to think about it is you don't want to think that no one else can do it. I will tell you right now, apart from like we can even feed you like we can even get people to feed you food that you don't even have to take your hand out of. Like they can get somebody with a spoon to shove food in your face. Like there is almost nothing, very very few things where you have to be present to hug your children. Apart from that, there's almost nothing that somebody can't help you with. Now what I'd love for people to think about is there's a spectrum of help. If this is they can do everything completely, so I'm just going to say they can do everything 100%. That means you don't have to be involved. This is 0% where you to be involved. A lot of people think tons of things live here, and what we're trying to
Mhm.
say is this is false. The interesting part is there's this fun green zone. Let's see if I can find my green here. It's somewhere here. And you may not be able to get rid of all your projects, but all we're saying is you don't have to get rid of all your projects. Let's get rid of 80% of it.
Mhm.
So you can either get rid of this 80%, and then what happens here is they give you a draft, as what Late was saying. So if they're going to build something for him, they don't post it or send the email or whatever. They build the draft, and then all that Late has to do now, he just has to okay or proof the draft. And so only one of two things happen. Thing number one that happens is Late actually proves the draft, or it's they automatically get it done. But this does not happen anymore. The 0 to 80%. And I think that what people don't understand is they're like, hey, I can't hand this off completely. So the question you should always be asking yourself is, hey, what if someone else took the first draft at this and they just showed me that? What if someone else took the first crack at it? What if someone else just reorganized it? What if someone just, like, even as far as email, no one can check my email for me. No, no one's saying no one can check your email. Like, what if they just skinned your email, took away all the spam, took away all the things that were responded to? Someone asked for a W-9, someone asked for your email address, someone asked to activate a course, someone wanted something forwarded. They took care of those things. And the only things that were left in your inbox where they were not sure of, but they drafted the email and left it as drafts. And you just went in, changed a little language and hit send because they can do that. And so if the big shift for you is not, can you hand it off? It's like, how much of this can they take off? Assume that they're smart and capable and they can take a lot of it off.
Mhm. I mean, you should be just master approval, right? You just stamp it, right? Stamp or you give edits. And I think that's a nice thing. I mean, whether it's marketing or EA or whatever it may be, even for my emails, I'll have Angie. I would say more like 95%. I'm really just 5% because usually it's all really, really good. And then what's interesting is like when you say it's like 80-20 split, 80% they're doing it, they're drafting, then they get to 90%, and then it gets better, and then they get to 100%, and you're not doing it at all. And that's like a really powerful thing is I think a lot of people think that I can only offboard some of these tasks, but then these ones I have to have control. Why do you have to have control if you're not, if let's say for example for an agent, the only thing that you really have to do is probably just the client relationship portion of it. Like you don't even really have to be in person. You hire showing agents, you hire runners, like so you don't really have to be the one doing it. It's just more of a control trust thing, and I think that's also a huge problem is a control trust thing with a lot of people. If I don't do it, it's not going to be executed, and it's not going to be executed at a high level, and it's just a poor mentality when it comes down to task delegation of it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I would think of it a little differently. I would think of it as, I actually agree with Light. If you don't do it, no one else can do it your way. I'm in full agreement with that. No one can do it your way, right? But the question you have to ask is, does it have to be done your way? Right?
Mhm.
And the even better question to ask is, if it has to be done your way, does it have to be done by you? Right? So those are the two levels of question to ask, which is, does it have to be done your way? If it's not, and you just got done, that's great. Hey, if I just got the form submitted on the website, but I use Safari instead of Chrome, why do you care? Right?
Sure.
But if you wanted to make sure it needed Chrome because of like a plugin or whatever, and you need it, that's cool. It happened to be done your way. It doesn't need to be done by you. But if you think about it, the Bezoses, the Musks, the whoever's of the world, they don't do that. Someone else is doing it for them, right? And so I think it's super important to actually have that. The the biggest unlock for me late was going from a absolutist mindset, meaning, oh no, I can't hand this off, to, oh yes, I can hand this off. But now I've realized, I think what unlocked me a lot, now I've realized that there's a spectrum. And if I can give away 30%, it's still helpful. If I can give away 30% of 10 things, now I've gotten back 100% multiple times over, which is really powerful.
Mhm.
And so if there's any kind of like anything that you can take away that has changed like our lives, it's this, where it's not absolute anymore. And I don't mind if it's 0 or 100. I know that I can still win, in the middle. I'll give you one last thing, and then I'm curious about your feedback on this. This is where I've seen the difference between an amateur person who has employees and a pro. And to me, this is the biggest system, the biggest advantage. This is ad hoc kind of tasks, like ad hoc do this, and they keep saying, hey, I'm going to text you, do this. I'm going to text you, do this. I'm going to call you, do this. I'm going to email you, do this. And this person's
Mhm.
like, okay, 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 okay. I don't know what priority, but I'll just work as hard as I can. Right.
Mhm.
And the amateur, again, that's really, really hard for them. What a pro does is this, as simple as possible, is just to get some kind of project management system. Right. And so the project
Mhm.
management system does a couple of things. One, it, draw my thing here. It allows you to prioritize. So now I know what tasks are going to get done first. I know what date that they're going to get done, what delivery, and I know the scope of everything that's needed. And I can track on a dashboard as to whether it got done or not. I don't need somebody just telling me what got done so I can see the proof. And so it forces me to put everything in here. And so I just manage what needs to get done, and this person does it overall. And you have a pretty harmonious relationship because this person is looking at this and saying, hey, I just got to get all of this stuff done. And yes, there's going to be ad hoc things that happen on the side. That's okay. But if you don't have an 80-20 rule on the ad hoc versus the organized, then what's going to happen is this 20% is going to take over, and you're going to feel really terrible because you're going to be like, no one's listening to me in any way. The biggest difference between the amateurs and the pros, for the pros to get it right, is to have a project management system of some sort, because that way the people that you're working with know what to actually get done.
Yeah, and I mean, going on your point, let's go to the amateur really quick about the ad hoc do this. Is like, let's say you're texting, let's say you're emailing, let's say you're slacking. How could you possibly keep things organized in like just a thread channel, right? Hey, I need you to respond to this email. Hey, I need you to do this marketing, and they go, when? Like today, tomorrow? How do you need me to do this first? Is this one priority? Which one is important, right? So now they're asking, talk about Q&A. Now they're asking 500 questions, right? And then you're too busy out, and then you get very frustrated, right? And then you go, and then what happens? People goes, I'll just do it myself, right? I'll just do it myself. Like that's like the number one thing when it comes to an amateur. Like they have these things that they want to delegate. Somebody will ask a question because they don't know the priority, the deadline, any of that kind of stuff. And they go, whatever, I'll just do it myself. And then they get pissed, and then they get frustrated, and then they fire this person, and then it's just like a loop. Then they're going back to doing everything on their own. I mean, what Asana costs? There's Asana, there's Trello, there's so many different tools and platforms, right? And just like even for me, like I have a board. I'm looking at it right now. My whole board is what's due today, what's due tomorrow, what's due within a week, what's due within a month, what's overview, and everything else. And it has a deadline on everything, so that my team member knows, hey, the boot camp that you're building, it needs to be done by Friday, the 14th, and it needs to be done by X amount of time, right? Or hey, this is actually gonna be super priority, and I think one thing that we've talked about in the past is like priority planning, but also there's, depending on the position, there's also sprints, like put it in the sprint. Would you mind touching on that before we close out? Because I think that's super important when we talk about that kind of pro mentality of task delegation, but also the priority and planning behind it.
Yeah, totally. So, um, what people, us as humans, you want to think about us as humans as one of the things that makes us all um, human, and the common bond is that we work, we rest, we regenerate, we work, we rest, we regenerate. So there's like there's a very natural rhythm to that. So if you take the natural rhythm, how can we take normal natural rhythms of our lives and put it into a system, right? And so um, the software engineers figured it out. Like software development's a really hard thing because engineers go hard on building something, but if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority, right? And so you need these natural cycles. So the software kind of development industry came up with this idea of sprints, and all the standard kind of version of that is they take 2 week sprints. So for these 2 weeks, they say, hey, for 2 weeks with 5 engineers, we can roughly work on 5 times 10, 50 hours a week times 2 weeks. That's 100 hours. We can work on 100 hours worth of stuff. All right, I have 100 hours on the bank right here, and you have all these projects, Sharon. All your projects are scoped 2 hours, 8 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, etc. Hey, Sharon, we have 100 hours. You can slot whatever you want in these 100 hours, but if you suddenly go to 110 hours and you say you need it done in this sprint, it's not going to work. Something has to drop. So you have to tell me that I can do 100 hours worth of work. Otherwise, I'm going to burn out my engineers, and then no one is going to ever come back. And it's really important to realize that, because if you can start estimating how much time it takes for projects to get done, and if you can't estimate, it means it's too big. So if
Hmm.
someone says do taxes and you don't know how to estimate how long it'll take, it just means that you don't know everything that's involved in doing taxes. So the first thing I would be like, hey, figure out how long it's going to take to do my taxes. That's probably a 1 hour project. Cool. So I'll put that before I can scope anything else. So that goes in the sprint. So a lot of times what we do in our sprints is we do execution based stuff and we do discovery based stuff. So we say, hey, I don't know late how long it'll take, like what we want to do for our Christmas offer and our funnel around that. I have no idea. So for these first 2 weeks, this sprint, we're going to like do some discovery and come up with a plan. And that plan is 90 minutes. So I can squeeze that into my 100 hours, because then at the end of the sprint, I would have delivered a plan, and then we can take that plan to like put in the next sprint. If you start to realize that, what happens is people are like, well, that's very constricting. What happens is it forces you to work on the most important stuff. Because if you only knew you had 100, like I always think about this, it's not about the 100 hours in the sprint. I think about it, what if I only had 100 hours to live, right?
Hmm.
So when you only have 100 hours to live, you start to prioritize the important things that you do in the next 100 hours. And if that's the case, then you immediately say no, like yes to something, and not now to something else, right? And you're just saying this is not in my 100 hours. And you're doing that because, and the more you do that 3 or 4 times and you make no progress, you'll realize that you're starting to choose poorly, and your choices of prioritization will get better. in the amateur way of prioritizing, you keep doing it, and then you just keep blaming you just keep blaming the world that, hey, I'm working really hard but not seeing any results, but you don't take responsibility that you just chose the wrong projects to do. And now your team feels pressure because they feel like nothing ever moved forward because you
Getting
chose
done.
the wrong projects. And so the sprint things are really good because always think about, hey, what would, if I only had 100 hours left to live, what would I do? You would prioritize better. If I only had 100 hours of work to do, why you'd prioritize better. We are in this massive game of prioritization. And the very fact that you're listening to this is you're like, hey, I want to find a way to scale my business in some way so I can prioritize the things that are important to me. So that's why like the 2 week sprints are insanely powerful. And we work on 2 week sprints.
Love it. Awesome. Well, Sharon, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for sharing. I mean, you have hundreds of hacks. These are, I know, just like the most important ones. It's just a change mentality shift. I think that's like a huge thing, especially going into 2025 for anybody listening, of hiring in general. But also just making it easier to delegate, figure out the role in which you want to hire for. A lot of the questions that, that I typically get is, what do I need? How do I delegate? Why should I do this? And I think there's a lot more to it. And everything that you've shared today, I think just moves us closer to that needle. And I appreciate you for doing so. Always a pleasure, man. And again, thank you so much.
Yeah, you got it. Hey, so for folks that I will tell you this, you're not supposed to know how to do this. That's why there are pros. Having Elite and the team having, placed thousands of folks, they know how to do this. And if you feel like you don't know exactly know how to do it, just get on a call. Like say, hey, how do I do this? Get a strategy
Mhm.
in place before you go do something because I will say this quote, it's not your fault that you don't know, but it is your problem that you don't know. So it's not your fault, but it is your problem. But the nice part is you have a direct resource to help you. So take advantage of the folks that have done it multiple times.
Love it. Always here to help, man. Yeah, you can always book a call at assistantly.com. It's 30-minute jam session, very similar to kind of how Sharon and I were jamming today. Take your brain dump, put it into a great uniform job description, walk you through the process. I'm just here to, be a guide and help any entrepreneur, any executive that's looking to hire for their business. So hope everybody enjoyed this, and we look forward to the next one.